Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. In this video, I break down the latest Squadron 42 monthly report, letting you know all the progress over the last month. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members who allow me to make these kinds of videos. If you do enjoy my content and would like to support the channel from as little as $1 a month, it is all very much appreciated. All the links are in the description below. So, kicking off this report with animation, the team progressed with several cinematic and gameplay story scenes. This involved working on the mess hall life, Vanduul combat, zero-G movement, railings for officers, whatever that means, surrender and maintenance animations, hurt and stumble blockouts, mocaps and staggers. They also began blocking out medpen and medical beds, and NPCs accessing emergency exits from usables. They mention usables a lot. Basically it's just anything that a character or an AI or a player can actually interact with physically. The final motion capture was shot for a number of animations in the blockout phase, and finally mocap was completed for stim smoking, conditional deaths like freezing and acid, and all the required facial animations for interchangeable performances. So it sounds like people are going to start smoking those drugs. For character art, the team made significant progress on Agent Treo, whose head was improved and passed to tech animation. She is the advocacy agent that we saw in the vertical slice. Concepting for her Basilisk advocacy outfit approached completion, while a revision pass began on the main pilot flight suit used by the Navy, and some characters were updated that couldn't be dealt with last year. The team also set up 2 assets to test the new Vertex cloth simulation, called V-Cloth as it's known, and this was a major dependency for a long time and will significantly improve clothing and hair simulation. Now I'm really excited for this tech. I do love the idea of clothes crumpling realistically, but also it seems like it might be what's holding up getting this hair simulation in the PU. As we have heard, they are choosing designs and sorting out the Squadron 42 hairs first. So I guess getting V-Cloth working for hair simulation, and then we can start seeing maybe better hair in the PU as well. That would be nice. And finally, the character art team will soon move on to a full concept pass of the Screaming Galsons faction and the characters required for Chapter 4. Who the hell are these Screaming Galsons? Or it sounds like it will be a pirate org, like the OMC that we have currently in Squadron. So moving on to engine, the physics team finished tier 1 of geometry instancing, which is the second of 3. For zero-G traversal, engineering continued their work on a new passive ragdoll mode. Issues with communication between the game code and the animation and physics systems were found and fixed, and alongside this, a new passive ragdoll mode was added to skeleton physics. Hopefully some of this work will help to alleviate the issues with vehicles that we load into our cargo bays bouncing around. Additional support was given to the Planet Tech team, who were looking to improve vegetation touch blending on shorter asset varieties. Basically, this is just as the player moves through flora, plants and so forth, it'll move realistically. Time was spent improving wheeled vehicle physics, with a few improvements provided for the current mode, while they work on the new updated mode. And I do believe that this week's Inside Star Citizen will actually have some ground vehicle updates, or some showcase to show us maybe what these new improvements are for the current mode. So contact handling for tanks was improved, along with improvements made to the engine and gearbox code. CIG did mention that the Nova Tonk will handle and move like real world tanks, but I do wonder if they are planning to create a fully functioning gearbox for wheeled vehicles. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to do so, but we haven't heard anything about them planning to do this, so we will see. For the renderer, work continued on the Gen12 transition, and support for the remaining secondary vertex streams, such as skinning attributes, velocity and secondary UV streams were added. The shading of volumetric clouds was completed, and a first draft is currently with the artists for prototyping and feedback. More improvements to cloud shaping and shadowing were implemented, and a believable multi-scatter approximation was added too. Cloud shading now includes atmospheric-based ambient lighting, with ground reflections being added later, and lots of work to reduce aliasing when shaping clouds. And then finally for clouds, research into efficient skipping of empty space between the clouds commenced. Hopefully we will begin to see some examples of all of this progress, as they have been spending a lot of time working on clouds. Not that I'm opposed to that, it's just I'm intrigued to see how they now look. So the gameplay features team continued submitting mission fail conditions. Now designers can set up default triggers such as if you are constantly shooting a friendly within a given time limit, these send an event to say that the player has failed the mission and for what reason, with the ability for designers now to script bespoke failures, and they can also script what happens to the player if they fail via other means and display the given reason. Also, the designers received the ability to detect what the player is controlling in a ship as well, which will be used for the in-game tutorial, and the distress beacon mechanic was further developed based on feedback during play reviews, so players can now use their scanners to detect weak distress signals. Last month, the gameplay story team supported on chapters 4A and 14, making incremental improvements and delivering new abandoned animations, and some important polish work was completed for the Morrow Tour. It'll be interesting to see just how much of a difference and how much improvement there is to the Morrow Tour from when we first saw it to where it is now. I do hope they show us that again. I mean, we've seen it. There's no reason why they couldn't show that section again, just to give us an insight into where the current standard is. One focus last month was Play Anywhere scenes, in which an AI character will approach the player to initiate conversation. They are trying to achieve a natural result with this, and they say the first of them requires further polish, but it's looking very promising. And this will likely be that as you're making your way around the Idris, the Stanton Idris, AI may approach you and just chat to you, and you can build sort of relationships with them. So for the graphics team, their focus was on two main areas. We have automated testing and the Gen12 renderer. Various improvements were made to the automated tester for better reliability, which is crucial as major changes are rolled out to ensure graphics don't break anything that are implemented by the other teams. For the Gen12 renderer, work continued to reach parity with the old Shadow code path so that it can be enabled by default. Also, the testing of the Vulkan backend was rolled out further across the teams to get wider visibility on the new API. And finally, to aid in debugging, the font rendering system was ported to Gen12 also. So very happy to hear that Vulkan is being rolled out to all the other teams so that they can get a hands-on. Hopefully this means that it won't be too long now until Star Citizen starts utilizing this. But also the Gen12 shader has been making major progress, so I can't imagine that we're waiting too long for that either. The AI content team continued with the engineer behavior, helping to identify further low-level improvements that could be extended to other systems to achieve more complex behaviors, very similar to what they did when they implemented the bartender. They also started the downstream definitions of the usables, which are required for the engineer, for hygiene and the vendor shop extensions, with the tier 0 implementations of the hawker, tourist and tour guide behavior being completed. For AI features, the team made improvements to the communication system, which will allow them to drive randomization in a way that prevents possible repetition. So basically, in most games, you will notice every now and again 2 or 3 NPCs will perform the same animation at the same time, which is obviously very unimmersive and unrealistic. This system will actually stop that from happening, which will make it feel less gamey. For usables, the team extended the crafting dictionary used to understand which item a usable can produce, which means that if an AI has a weapon with a scope on it, the AI knows that it can remove that scope and then place that on a different weapon, which will be applicable to all things in the game. The team also continued to improve the automatic testing setup for subsumption, making testing way faster. For character combat, improvements were made to the fire cadence skill calculation, which now uses skill formulas to ensure different character abilities influence the actual ability to use the weapon. And the AI rate of fire now takes into account the weapon proficiency skill to allow each character to have a different confidence on how many bullets to use, how quickly to pull the trigger based on their traits, like how confident or are they show-offs, and on their actual ability with the specific weapon. Now all of this will actually make the AI feel more realistic and less scripted, and create a lot more diversity, as each NPC will have different skill levels, different traits, and varied knowledge of each weapon. The team are currently progressing on subcomponent targeting, extending the targeting system to better filter entity subtargets. This system will be shared across spaceships and characters. For example, NPCs on foot could target a ship's engine with a rocket launcher the same way that a ship would target the engine with missiles. And the example that we got to see here just basically shows once a thruster is blown off, it will then target the next engine or subcomponent. A very simple work in progress demo, but it just shows that the tech is working, of course. In the next example, we can see a character replenish their ammunition, and this test is to validate the setup of the ammo crates, and make sure that the character can correctly find the crate that provides magazines or ammo for the weapon that they are currently using, and that they can obviously use that correctly. The AI tech team supported character EVA movement with the plan to reuse and extend the 3D pathfinding implemented for spaceships to characters in 0G. So current work is to improve and extend the movement system to ensure the right context is available when an EVA or ship control movement is requested. They're also planning to support automatic enters and exits for ships from 0G using the usable system as well. The level design team worked closely with art on several FPS spaces, with these locations receiving a lot of polish from the FPS design team just to ensure that they're fully realised and believable places. Also, the push for the gold standard pirate AI behaviour was continued by the space and dogfighting team, while the buddy AI support was scoped out to determine its requirements. So firstly, it'll be great to get the gold standard pirate into the PU as well. Obviously right now the AI is heavily affected by the server's health, which is an ongoing resolve, and once resolved, seeing how effective these gold standard pirates are will be quite a lot of fun. Secondly, this buddy AI system is having an AI cooperatively work alongside you, which will of course apply to the PU one day when we can hire NPCs. The narrative team continued to participate in playthrough reviews, which are extremely useful, they say, to ensure their content has the desired impact and that the dialogue options cope with the range of player choices and actions. They also continued to provide feedback to the Xenolinguist as progress continues with the Vanduul language, with the team saying that developing the alien languages has been a very fruitful endeavour for the team, because beyond the language itself, the process has been great for creating cultural details and species behaviour, as languages often require an additional layer of specifics to be functional, and we have seen this with the Xi'an. When they started creating their language, we heard a lot about the history and the nuance of the species, and the same goes for the Banu, so it'll also apply to the Vanduul. But obviously how much do we know about the Vanduul in lore will be different to what they actually know in-house. Anyway, for QA, the testing focus was on FPS combat, particularly Vanduul behaviours and animations. Very excited to see how they will attack us, while ship combat testing looked at the recent pilot behaviour updates. They also created a checklist to help keep on top of changes coming through the pipeline, along with any bugs that may arise through development. The tech animation cleaned up assets, as a core change to the in-engine animation pipeline invalidated a large number of them. Development of the in-house animation graph toolset continued, which is going through early user testing to collate feedback and bugs for the next phase of development, and they also dedicated time to the ongoing creation of the Xi'an body and face rig. Very much looking forward to seeing the Xi'an and how they look and move in game. I feel like it'll be quite a special day when we get the first functioning alien or creature that we get to observe. So, moving on to the visual effects team, they continued their work on gas cloud effects, including support for the creation of the actual gas clouds and interior effects, like small debris that collides with the ship. And finally, they also began testing the recent particle lighting improvements, which have a more physical based setup, and this makes it easier for the artists to create more natural and realistic looking effects in a variety of environments and lighting conditions. So there you have it, that was the Squadron 42 monthly report. Lots of work going on in AI and clouds, which are two really important areas for both Squadron and the PU, obviously AI being far more important, but it does also sound like the Vulcan API and Gen12 renderer are making great progress. Really hope that we get to see some of these coming into the game this year, or at least early this year. But with that said, these videos are made possible thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members, so a big thank you to you guys. If you do enjoy my videos, please consider hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to be notified when my videos go live, tick that notification bell. If you could do my channel a big favour and hit that thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And if you want to talk more about Star Citizen, its development, or the gameplay, follow the link to my Twitch channel. It is twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. You are all more than welcome. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.